Thank you for tuning in to the Island Treasures podcast. We value the insights shared by our guests and host, but it's important to note that their personal experiences are intended to inform and encourage, and not to replace professional, legal, or medical advice. With that, we are ready for today's exciting episode. Hi there, I'm Alison Van Schiev alongside Caregiver Consulting, and I am the host of the Island Treasures podcast. As 2023 comes to a close, I'd like to revisit this year's podcast episodes, as the content was diverse and worth revisiting. We started out with an informative episode featuring Dr. Delon, Canterbury, in the episode called Pharmacists, the Best Kept Secret. Before Delon became a pharmacist, his own grandmother had been given a medication that she shouldn't have. And it was a pharmacist who drew the connection and removed the medication from her. Now Delon shares an important message through his episode and his business, geriatrics, as he helps overwhelmed caregivers stop their loved ones from being over-medicated. As you listen to the episode, you'll hear aspects that contribute to making pharmacists the best kept secret in the world of caregiving, helping patients find cost savings, navigating the healthcare system, reducing harm, and providing advocacy. This topic arises in a later episode called A Caregiver's Transferable Skills, where caregiver Katrina Prescott highlights how she found the services of the pharmacist to be so helpful when she was caregiving for her mom. So it's time to share this secret with other caregivers. We are next visited by caregiver Roxane Anderson in the episode called A Flood Amidst Caregiving. Not only was Roxane in the midst of caring for her husband who had diabetes, mitochondrial myopathy, and neuroendocrine tumors, but she was working full-time as a social worker when they were uprooted by a devastating flood. Roxane faced each challenge head-on with fortitude at the cost of her own well-being. And that's when she ended up in the emergency room. Roxane is now a huge proponent of self-care and recognizes with compassion when others are showing signs of being overwhelmed in their caregiving situations. The next episode featured Tracy Crump, whose experience with her mother's illness highlighted the possibility that not all dementia-like symptoms mean your loved one has dementia. In fact, in Tracy's case, after agonizing with her mom's condition, she remembered hearing about normal pressure hydrocephalus. And she wondered, could it be normal pressure hydrocephalus? And in her mom's case, it was. Through this revelation, her mom's treatments were directed specifically to NPH, and her mom made an amazing turnaround. Throughout Tracy's caregiving, she did not lose sight of doing what she loves, and that is writing. And as she understands the burdens and joys of caregiving, she has written helpful resources, including 22 stories in various editions of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Our next guest was Lori Lemasters, and she talked about her use of therapeutic journaling through caregiving as a coping strategy that she used during her 8-year caregiving journey. When her mom suffered a massive stroke, Lori left her own family, relocating so she could go and care for her mom. It was through therapeutic writing that Lori was able to process her emotions and turn the challenges of caregiving into a positive experience, which she now looks back on as a beautiful experience. Lori wrote a book with an eye-catching title, You're a Caregiver, Not a Saint. Yeah, right, to help caregivers learn to use this technique to work through their emotions while caregiving. Next, we are joined by Toni Gitles. Toni is a return guest and friend of the Island Treasures podcast. This episode is called Rising to the Occasion of Caregiving, where Toni shares more about her 14-year caregiving story as a continuation of our conversation from the episode called And Then I Danced. Toni has been busy since that first episode, and she was eager to talk about her upcoming book, which launched in September 2023, called 21 Mistakes Caregivers Make and How to Avoid Them: Solutions and Strategies to Reduce Stress and Increase Happiness. Toni shares how caring for a family member is an act of love that comes from the heart and focuses on the importance of relationship, communication, happiness, and love to help make the experience of caregiving into a journey of connection, advocacy, and discovery. We next were visited by a caregiver, a life coach, and a mompreneur, Natalie Hankins. Natalie is the caregiver for 2 adult children. Her son has autism, and her daughter has Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. Natalie learned so much as she championed her way through caregiving, finding therapies that would work best for her kids. She is passionate about helping other caregivers of children with special needs and mompreneurs, and she became a life coach. Ever since my certification as a caregiving consultant, I had wanted to have Denise Brown as a guest on the podcast, and it happened in July. Denise truly does equip family caregivers with strategies, tools, and insights. And in the episode entitled Equipping Family Caregivers with Strategies, Tools, and Insights, she shares her caregiving story and touches on her business origins before she founded the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Through the Academy, Denise develops and delivers training programs for the workplace and for individuals who want to coach family caregivers. Denise supports individuals managing difficult life experiences through her coaching, planning, and training. And by doing so, she helps them find hope, possibilities, and a path forward. Next came a visit with Sandra Strauss, author of A Toxic Brain: Revelations from a Health Journey. Before I interviewed Sandra, she gifted me with her book. I read the book, took thorough notes throughout, and felt the information could enhance my own well-being. And that is Sandra's hope for all who read it. Dynamic Destinies of Health and Well-being. The episode is called A Caregiver's Journey into Brain Inflammation, a wake-up call for us all. And it truly is. Sandra shared her caregiving journey with honesty, and her devotion to her husband was compelling. In September, I was joined by Heidi Rome in the episode called You Just Have to Love Me: A Mother's Caregiving Journey. This is another compelling episode. As Heidi prioritized caregiving for her mother, she postponed having her own family. And when she did, she found herself in another caregiving experience, as one of her sons has severe autism. Heidi discusses the realities of being in a lifelong caregiving situation and shares many lessons about compassion and curiosity, as well as creating safe and supportive communities for the vulnerable, including those with severe autism. In the episode, Heidi shares the significance of the title, which came through a message from her son. Next, Katrina Prescott joins me in episode 21 called A Caregiver's Transferable Skills, after she and I were introduced by Chris McClellan of the Whole Care Network. As both a caregiver and a producer, Katrina combines her skills to support caregivers. And she's a strong advocate and voice for folks who are caregivers, after learning so much caring for her mom who had dementia. Katrina takes her knowledge and lived experience to great heights with her involvement in advisory groups and many projects, including producing the video series called Therapeutic Fibbing, which is a resource for caregivers and a tool to help reduce the stigma of dementia. Next, we take the podcast on location to Ireland to speak with Breda Miller in the episode called Island Treasures Visits a Caregiving Treasure in Ireland. Breda is also a return guest, and it was because of her first appearance on the podcast that I took the podcast to Ireland. Breda has written a play about her mother's dementia journey combined with her family's immigration journey, and I went to the play called Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home in Ireland. The play highlights many relatable experiences for caregivers, and by doing so, offers support, encouragement, and a feeling of community. Caregivers don't have to feel alone, or that they're the only one going through this, whatever this may be. And then the final full episode features Valerie Weens, as she shares how boundaries provided freedom in caregiving. Valerie also lives on Vancouver Island, and she was a sandwich generation caregiver. She knows how to navigate the healthcare system as she has been a case manager for the health district. As a nurse, she completed assessments for those seeking care and gained a better understanding of what caregivers experience when she put on her daughter hat. That's where the boundary setting came into full force for Valerie. Valerie has written a book called What Do We Do About Mom? And she started a business to help caregivers and folks find resources and navigate the healthcare system successfully. Interwoven throughout the full episodes are mini podcast episodes, often visiting a treasure found within a full episode. And there are a couple of mini episodes with independent content, such as the one called A Hymn for Her, a Caregiver's Story, featuring Kathy Newhouser. And this episode touches on how Kathy found a way to connect with her mom as a long-distance caregiver. Another mini episode was brought about by a question that I am frequently asked by caregivers who are facing the really tough decision of when to put their loved one into care. The hardest decision. In the hardest decision, I suggest some resources that have been helpful for caregivers going through this transitional phase of caregiving. Another mini episode is called The Musician's Daughter, where I visit an episode from season 2 with guest Betsy Haddad. Betsy had a lovely bond with her father, who was a gifted musician, and he was also diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Betsy's insights talk about the importance of relationship, as well as planning for future care needs. And this led to a brief overview of advanced care planning. And this wrap-up concludes with a mention of a bonus episode called How Island Treasures Came About. This episode I made to coincide with an event to relaunch the Whole Care Network. And as I spoke about my foray into podcasting on the Whole Care Network, I naturally also spoke about the Self-Caregiving Strategies podcast, which Teresa Wilbanks and I co-host. As each year passes, more and more podcasts are available for caregivers, and it can be overwhelming to find the right one for your specific situation. So I have provided this highlight reel from season 4 to help you decide if there's an episode that addresses your specific need. And the mini episodes are available for those times when you need a little boost and you don't have much time. The episodes all contain helpful resources from the best resources for caregivers, and that is other caregivers. Thank you for listening in 2023, and I invite you to subscribe to the Island Treasures podcast for more amazing podcasts coming in 2024.